When my wife first suggested we go to therapy, I agreed because I wanted to save our marriage. We had been distant for months, our conversations reduced to small talk, and intimacy felt forced. She convinced me that a professional could help us rediscover what we had lost. I didn't argue, because I truly loved her and wanted to make things work. What I didn't know was that the therapist she chose had gone through her own bitter divorce, and her advice would soon turn my world upside down. From the very first session, I noticed something odd. Instead of focusing on communication or rebuilding trust, the therapist kept circling back to freedom and self-discovery. She told my wife that sometimes couples suffocate each other, and suggested that loosening the boundaries could bring excitement back. I thought she meant more hobbies, personal space, or separate activities. But one session later, the therapist openly suggested opening the marriage, just a little. My stomach dropped when I heard it. I told them I wasn't comfortable with that. To me, marriage was sacred, built on loyalty, commitment, and trust. My wife, however, nodded as if the therapist had given her the golden ticket to happiness. On the drive home, she insisted it was only an experiment, that I was overreacting, and that we should at least try. I refused, but she kept pressing the subject until we stopped talking altogether. Weeks later, I noticed changes. She dressed differently, stayed out later, and smiled at her phone more than at me. When I asked her, she swore nothing was going on, but deep down, I knew. Then one night, when she said she was going to a yoga class, I followed her. Instead of stretching mats and candles, I saw her walk into a fancy restaurant, dressed in heels, with another man waiting for her at the table. That moment broke me, but it also lit a fire inside. I didn't confront her immediately. I played along, pretended everything was fine, and let her believe I was clueless. The more she lied, the more determined I became. I started gathering evidence, pictures, messages, everything. She was so wrapped up in her affair that she didn't even notice me pulling away, building a quiet case against her. Revenge wasn't just about anger, it was about making her realize what she had thrown away. One evening, after weeks of pretending, she came home late again. I greeted her with a calm smile and handed her a folder. Inside were photos of her and her lover, screenshots of their flirty texts, and even a hotel receipt with her signature. She froze, her face draining of color. Before she could speak, I said, "This is what your therapist meant by rediscovering yourself? Destroying your marriage." She stammered excuses, blaming the therapist, blaming me, even blaming stress. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I told her I had already filed for divorce and attached the evidence for court. The shock in her eyes told me she hadn't expected me to act so swiftly. She begged me to reconsider, promised it was only a phase, but I was done. Revenge, for me, wasn't about screaming or violence. It was about control, about reclaiming my dignity after being humiliated. I made sure her family knew the truth. I sent the evidence to the therapist as well, with a note, *, your advice ruined another marriage, congratulations. The silence that followed was louder than any apology they could have offered. My wife tried to turn the tables, saying I was cruel for exposing her. But her parents, once her strongest supporters, looked at her with disappointment. They told her she had crossed a line that couldn't be repaired. That night, she packed a bag and left for her sister's place, while I sat alone in the house, strangely at peace. In the weeks that followed, I focused on myself. I joined a gym, reconnected with friends, and even traveled for the first time in years without worrying about anyone's approval. Every step reminded me that I had been living half a life, tied down by someone who didn't value loyalty. My revenge wasn't just about exposing her lies, it was about proving to myself that I could rise above them. She tried contacting me again, crying that the man she cheated with had lost interest once he realized she was getting divorced. She wanted to come back, saying she had made a mistake. But by then, I had no feelings left for her, only the memory of betrayal. I told her calmly, "You wanted freedom. Now you have it. Don't come back." Word spread among our friends about what had happened, and many quietly admitted they had never liked the therapist's influence. Some even stopped seeing her, claiming she projected her bitterness onto others. In some strange way, my story had saved others from going down the same destructive path. Months later, the divorce was finalized. She got far less than she had expected because of the evidence I provided. The house, the car, and most of the savings stayed with me. It wasn't just legal victory, it was justice. I had lost love, but I had gained clarity and independence. Looking back, I realized the therapist didn't ruin my marriage. She only revealed what was already broken. My wife's willingness to cheat showed me who she truly was. My revenge wasn't about punishing her, it was about freeing myself from a cage built on lies. Now, when people ask me about love, I don't say I'm bitter. I just say I learned the hard way that trust, once broken, can never be repaired. And as for my ex-wife, she will live with the knowledge that the man who loved her most was also the one who exposed her. That, to me, is the sweetest revenge.